Buy 2 pigs, get a filthy alien slave for free. But human washed her and amp, revealed her true beauty. The livestock market of Nerith, 5 sat under a pale, harsh sun that flattened every color into sharp, unforgiving tones. Dust drifted along the lanes in thin ribbons. Pins clanged, metal bowls scraped against rails, and traders' voices cut through the noise in clipped rhythms. Nothing here felt gentle. Everything moved fast. Animals, buyers, workers, and anyone who stood still became an obstacle. Cade Thorne stepped off his cart and adjusted the strap of his work jacket. His clothes were plain, faded gray trousers, boots scuffed from field work, a dark shirt with sleeves rolled to his forearms. He blended in easily with the rest of the farmers, which suited him. He didn't want questions. He didn't want attention. He only wanted 2 bristle pigs healthy enough to carry his farm through the next 2 cycles. Before coming to Nerith, 5 a few years ago, he'd worked off-world as an infantry scout. He'd seen enough loss to carry in silence for a lifetime. Here, he kept to himself, ran a modest plot, and tried to live a quieter life where problems were measured by soil moisture and feed ratios, not body counts. He scanned the market out of habit. He always did. The habit hadn't dimmed with time, even if he liked to pretend it had. His eyes moved across rows of pens, checked exits, tracked movements around him. Nothing hostile here, just commerce. But vigilance had become a reflex he couldn't turn off. Havel's voice rose above the noise. "Thorne, over here." Cade made his way to the trader's pen. Havel stood with his hands on his hips, vest stained at the collar, sunburn fading into peeling patches. The man had a permanent grin, the kind built from easy deals and easier compromises. "Got a good pair today," Havel said, patting the rail. "Strong, fat, steady. Exactly what you need." Cade stepped closer and ignored the sales pitch. He crouched and checked the pigs himself. Both moved well. Their sides inflated evenly when they breathed. Their eyes were clear. He pressed his thumb to each tag and watched the green lights blink. "They'll do," he said. Havel named a price well above reason. Cade countered with a number grounded in reality. They trimmed the difference until they hit a point both could live with. Cade's wrist tag pinged the transfer with a short vibration. "Done," Havel said. "Cart still out front." "Yes." "Good. Take them through the rear gate. Got something extra for you." Cade straightened. His shoulders tightened under his shirt. "I bought 2, he said. "Exactly." Havel's grin widened. "And I'm giving you a bonus. Free. No paperwork." Cade followed him toward the back enclosure. The noise of the main market thinned as they moved away from the central aisle. The clean paint and organized stalls gave way to patched boards and uneven ground. A broken trough leaned against a fence. A sheet of metal propped up one corner, rattling in the breeze. At first glance, the corner of the pen looked empty. Then Cade noticed the shape, curled, still covered in layers of dried mud. Thin limbs pulled tight, shoulders hunched, hair matted so thick he couldn't see its original color. Torn straps clung to her skin like they'd hardened onto her body. A collar circled her neck, metal dull under the dirt. A chain ran from it to the post. Short chain, too short for standing comfortably. Havel nudged her leg with his boot. "Up." New owner. She flinched but didn't raise her head. Her hands tightened in the mud. Her breathing stayed shallow. Cade stepped closer. The smell hit immediately. Dry earth, sweat trapped under old dirt, a sour edge from lack of real water. She must have been here for days. "How long?" he asked. "A few market rounds," Havel said. Came in with a bulk herd. No species code made sense, so she went here until someone decided. No bids. No interest. So now she's yours. Free. Cade looked at her again. The mud hid everything. Her skin tone, her age, even her build. But nothing hid the exhaustion in her posture. Her back had curved into a protective shape, as if she'd learned that making herself smaller avoided attention. "We don't take untagged laborers," Cade said. "She's not labor," Havel replied. "She's stock. Or was. Now she's your problem." "Stock." The word landed hard. Cade kept his face still, but anger started under his ribs. He pushed it down, the way he always did when emotion tried to control his voice. "Unlock her," he said. Havel rolled his eyes and pressed a code into the collar. The lock clicked open with a dry scrape. The metal ring shifted enough to pull away from her skin, leaving a faint red mark beneath the mud. The chain slipped from the collar and fell into the dirt. Havel waved them off. "Take your pigs. Take her. I need to deal with buyers who actually spend money." He left the pen. The noise of the main market returned, but the space around the two of them felt strangely quiet. A few buyers glanced their way, more out of curiosity than concern, then moved on. Cade crouched again, careful not to block her escape route. "Can you stand?" he asked. She didn't move. He waited. Her shoulders trembled once. Then her fingers pressed into the dirt, pushing against the ground. Her knees shifted. Slowly, painfully, she lifted herself upright. The dried mud along her back cracked as she straightened. She kept her head lowered. Cade stepped back to give her room. "We're leaving," he said. "Walk behind me." She hesitated. Not because she resisted. She looked like someone who no longer understood the idea of refusing, but because she needed a moment to trust her legs. When she took her first step, she almost lost her balance. Her hand shot out and caught the rail. She didn't let go of the collar. She held it against her chest, chain dangling over her forearm. Cade opened the gate for her. As soon as she crossed into the main aisle, the sounds of the market closed in around them. Traders calling, children shouting, animals squealing. People looked at her openly, some with surprise, some with amusement, none with care. A teenager whispered to his father, "Is that from the mud pen?" The father pulled him forward by the shoulder. "Don't look." She shrank at the attention, shoulders curling inward, steps tightening as if she feared someone would strike her from behind. Cade didn't touch her, but he adjusted his pace so she stayed close enough not to feel lost in the crowd. When they reached the cart, he guided the pigs inside first. Once they settled, he placed a crate at the rear for her to step on. "You can sit in the corner," he said. "It's steadier there." She climbed in slowly and folded into the space behind the pigs. Her knees drew up, arms wrapped around them, collar still clutched against her chest. Her hair hid most of her face. Only a thin line of pale skin showed along her cheek, visible where the mud had cracked. Before closing the gate, Cade hesitated. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But he understood the shape of someone who had spent too long waiting for the next hit or insult. She watched him through her hair, eyes barely visible, but alert in a way that came from survival, not trust. He closed the gate gently and climbed into the front seat. The cart engine sputtered, then settled into its low hum. As they pulled away from the market, dust rose behind them and the noise faded. Cade kept his eyes on the road. He didn't look back yet, but he felt the weight of responsibility settle in his chest. Heavy, but not unwelcome. He had come for pigs. He was leaving with someone who had been treated like a mistake. His mission, simple as it sounded, had changed the moment he opened the pen door. He needed to get her clean. He needed to feed her. And he needed to figure out whether she wanted to stay or walk away once she stood on her own feet. He planned to give her that choice, even if she didn't know how to make it yet. The cart rolled toward the open fields, sunlight flashing off the metal rails. And for the first time since he'd arrived on Nerith 5, Cade felt the quiet life he'd built shift into something heavier and more human than he expected. The dirt road leading away from the market stretched into open farmland, flat fields, scattered storage sheds, irrigation pipes glinting under the sun. The air outside the noisy yard felt cooler, calmer, though the cart still rattled with every rut. Cade kept both hands on the steering bar, but his attention drifted behind him more often than he admitted. The woman sat motionless in the corner of the cart. Every time the wheels hit a bump, she tightened her grip on the collar, knuckles pale beneath the mud. Her breathing stayed shallow, controlled, like someone trained for punishment if she made noise. He slowed the cart as they approached a fork in the road. One path led to neighboring farms. The other pointed to his property, a modest stretch of land he'd taken over 3 years earlier. Fences lined the boundaries, and a row of large trees swayed in the breeze, their silver leaves catching light like thin metal flakes. "You'll have water soon," he said, not turning around. "Warm water." There was no reply. He didn't expect one. But he wanted her to hear something other than market noise or Havel's jokes. His voice sounded rougher than intended, so he cleared it. A few minutes later, the farm came into view. The main structure was small, stone foundation, reinforced walls, a metal roof he'd patch himself. A storage shed stood a short distance away. Nearby, a large trough connected to a heating unit sat under an awning, usually used to clean tools or rinse equipment. Today it would serve another purpose. As the cart rolled into the yard, he braked gently. The pigs grunted and shifted. He climbed down, boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. When he opened the rear gate, she pressed back against the wall of the cart, unsure whether she was expected to move or wait for orders. "You can come down," he said. "No rush." She hesitated, then pushed herself upright. Her legs shook under her weight. Cade set the crate down again, and after a long pause, she stepped onto it. Her foot slipped once, dry mud crumbling off her ankle, so he steadied the crate with his boot rather than reaching for her. She reached the ground and froze, taking in the open yard, the pig's shelter, the orchard stretching behind the fence, the sky free of shouting voices and gates. Cade watched her eyes move, even if she barely lifted her head. He saw the question that hung behind her silence. Not where she was, but why she was here at all. "You're safe," he said quietly. "This is my land. No one else steps here without my say." She swallowed, throat working behind the band of dried mud. The collar chain dangled from her hand when she lowered it. He nodded toward the stone trough. "Water's warming. You can wash there. I'll keep my distance." Her breathing quickened. That reaction confused him. He expected fear, but this looked closer to shock, like she didn't understand why he offered privacy at all. He walked to the shed and grabbed a bar of cleaning clay, a rough sponge, and a folded cloth shirt from his storage box. His shirt had seen better days, but it was clean. He laid them on the ledge of the trough, where she could reach without stepping away from the water. She stood a few paces back, waiting for direction, shoulders drawn inward. "You can wash yourself," he said. "Take as long as you need. I won't watch." She glanced at him through a curtain of hair, narrow and unsure. Mud cracked along her cheek as she blinked. Her fingers flexed against the collar, as though the metal weight kept her anchored. He realized then that he hadn't asked her name. He didn't know if she even remembered it. He stepped to the side, giving her the space of the entire yard. "If you need anything, just speak. I'll hear you." With that, he turned his back and walked to the pig's shelter to give her privacy. He busied himself with checking feed bins, even though he'd already filled them yesterday. The simple, repetitive work let him stand far enough away without looking like he was hovering. Behind him, he heard small movements, the scrape of feet on stone, the clink of the collar chain being set down, the faint splash as she tested the water with her fingertips. She didn't step in right away. The hesitation in her footsteps sounded like someone fighting the instinct to kneel or wait for permission. When she finally lowered herself into the trough, the water shifted with a soft ripple. Mud loosened and slid off her arms in thick sheets. She gasped once. The water must have been warmer than she expected, but the sound cut short, as if she worried even that might count as misbehavior. Cade tightened his grip on the feed bucket. He hated that reaction, hated the world that had taught it to her. Her voice came unexpectedly, quiet but clear. "Why did you take me?" He turned slightly, keeping his eyes on the pigs. "You weren't supposed to be in that pen. That is not an answer." He paused. She was right. He set the bucket down, still facing away. "Because leaving you there felt wrong." The water still behind him. He sensed her watching his back, trying to decide whether that answer held risk or truth. He added, "You're not stock. You're not property." A small sound left her, something between disbelief and a breath she hadn't meant to release. After a long silence, she asked, "What do you want me to do?" The question hit harder than any insult he'd heard in service. He exhaled slowly. "Nothing," he said. "Just clean yourself. Then eat. We'll figure the rest out after." The trough water sloshed as she worked the sponge over her arms. Mud thudded onto the ground. More fell in strips as she brushed it from her shoulders. Eventually, he heard her shift, soaking her hair. The trough heater hummed steadily. He kept his word and didn't turn. When she finally spoke again, Her voice was steadier. "I am not used to choosing." "I know," he answered. "You'll learn." A faint pause followed, like she weighed something important. "My name," she said, barely above the sound of water, "is Eris." Cade closed his eyes briefly. "All right," he said. "Eris, I'm Cade." She didn't reply, but the silence felt different, less like fear, more like acknowledgement. A few minutes later, he heard her shift to the edge of the trough, water dripping onto the stone. She reached for the clean shirt he'd left, fabric rustling as she unfolded it. When she slipped it over her head, the water on her skin made the material cling lightly. The shirt was far too large, falling past her hips, sleeves hanging loose where mud no longer hit her wrists. He gathered the nerve to turn around only when her movements quieted. Eris stood beside the trough, hair wet, skin no longer buried under filth. Her true color showed now, a deep violet tone that caught the light with a faint cool sheen. Pale lines curved along her ribs and shoulders, markings he didn't recognize but respected enough not to stare at. She held the collar in both hands, unsure what to do with it. Kate approached slowly. "You don't have to keep that." Her fingers tightened. "It was put on me before I remember waking. If I leave it somewhere, someone may pick it up and put it back." "You're on my land," he said. "No one touches you here." Eris lowered the collar to the trough ledge, not fully releasing it but loosening her grip. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the yard. A breeze moved through the orchard, rustling the leaves like quiet static. Cade motioned toward the house. "You should eat something. You look cold." She hesitated again, then nodded, lifting the oversized shirt to keep it from pulling under her feet. Inside the house, he kept things simple. A wooden table, a small cooker, a shelf of preserved grains. He ladled warm larn root stew into a bowl. The thick texture, earthy smell, and gentle spice filled the room quickly. He sat on the table, then stepped back so she wouldn't feel trapped. Eris stood at the threshold, hesitant, dripping water onto the floorboards. The shirt clung to her form in places where her shoulders hadn't dried. "It's food," he said. "Not much, but good." She approached slowly and sat at the table's edge. Her hands trembled as she lifted the spoon, not from the weight. Her grip looked steady, but from uncertainty. The first bite made her pause with genuine surprise, like she hadn't tasted warm food in longer than she could recall. Cade leaned against the counter, giving her space to eat without watching too closely. He needed to earn her trust first. He needed to make this place feel like something other than another pen. Eris took another spoonful, slower this time. Her shoulders eased, only slightly, but enough for him to notice. She was here now, safe for the moment. But safety wouldn't erase the past. He knew that. He planned to guide her through steps she hadn't been allowed to take for a long time. Standing straight, speaking without flinching, deciding her own direction, even if it took weeks. Eris finished half the bowl before lowering the spoon. She lifted her gaze for the first time. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. Cade thought for a moment, then answered with quiet certainty. "Whatever helps you feel like a person again." The house settled into a quiet rhythm after the meal. Evening light stretched across the floorboards, warm and steady, softening the room's rough edges. Eris sat with her hands folded near the empty bowl, her wet hair dripping onto the oversized shirt. She looked steadier than earlier, but her posture still held a kind of readiness, shoulders slightly tensed, feet angled in a way that let her stand quickly if needed. Cade rinsed the pot in the basin. The sound of running water filled the silence. When he shut the tap, Eris lifted her eyes toward him. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" she asked. "The spare room," he said. "It's not much, but it's yours while you're here." Her brows tightened, subtle but unmistakable. She wasn't sure what yours meant in this place. Cade wiped his hands on a cloth. "I'll show you." He led her down the short hall. The spare room held a narrow bed with a simple frame, a folded blanket, a small table, and a window overlooking the orchard. He'd used it mostly for storage before: tools, spare jackets, old crates. He'd cleared it earlier while she washed, though not perfectly. One crate still leaned against the wall, half forgotten. Eris stepped inside and pressed her palm lightly to the window frame. as if testing whether she was allowed to touch something. The sky outside had turned a deep blue. Faint lights pulsed along the irrigation lines in the distance. The quiet of the farm sat heavy and still, nothing like the market's chaos. She turned toward him. "Do you have rules?" He leaned against the doorway. "A few. Nothing complicated." She waited. "First," he said, "you don't work unless you choose to. Not today, not tomorrow. Second, if you need anything, food, clothes, water, you say it. And third, you don't sleep on floors or in corners. You sleep in a bed." Her grip on the window frame tightened. "Why does that matter?" "Because you're not livestock," he answered. "And people sleep in beds." That made her look away. A soft breath broke from her, not quite steady. She touched the hem of the borrowed shirt, pinching the fabric between her fingers as if grounding herself. She finally asked, "How long do you expect me to stay?" "As long as you want," he said. "Or one night. Your choice." The word choice hung in the air. He could see the conflict behind her eyes, wanting to believe him, but not having anything to compare it to. Kate stepped back. "I'll let you rest. If you need me, I'm just down the hall." He turned, but her voice stopped him. "What were you doing at the market today?" she asked. He glanced over his shoulder. "Buying pigs. That is all. That's all." Something in her expression eased, like she had been searching for threats hidden in his intentions. Finding none made her shoulders lower a fraction. "And you?" he asked gently. "Do you know how you ended up there?" She hesitated. Her jaw tightened. Fear flickered through her eyes. Not fear of him, but fear of the memory. "I remember a transport," she said quietly. "Metal walls. Cold air. Voices deciding things as if I wasn't awake. Then mud. Noise. That pen." Kate didn't move closer. He stayed where he was, giving her control over the space. "Do you know where you came from before that?" he asked. She lifted a hand to the silver markings along her ribs, tracing them with a thumb. "Not the place they took me from. The place before that is still clear, but I don't know how long ago it was." He nodded once. "We'll sort it out when you're ready." She gave a small nod in return. Kate stepped away from the doorway and returned to the kitchen to check the heater coils. The house felt quieter now, almost too quiet after the market noise. It made him aware of things he usually ignored: his own footfalls, the shift of the floorboards, the faint hum from the water pump outside. He filled a cup with warm tea and sat at the table. He told himself it was just a normal evening, but it wasn't. There was someone else in the house. Someone who had barely spoken all day, yet made the place feel different simply by breathing inside it. A soft knock came from the hall. Eris stood there, still wearing his shirt, hair half dry and falling in uneven strands around her face. Her feet were bare, toes curled slightly on the wood. She held the collar in both hands again. "I don't know where to put this," she said. "Anywhere that isn't on you," he replied. She stepped slowly into the kitchen, glancing around for a proper place. Her eyes lingered on the mantel above the stove, then the shelf of tools near the door, unsure if either was acceptable. Cade pushed a small metal tray toward her. "There!" She set the collar down with surprising care, as if the act itself might have consequences. Her fingers hovered above it before she pulled them back. "You don't have to be afraid of it anymore," he said. Her voice cracked softly. "I'm not afraid of the metal. I am afraid of what happens when it is gone." He understood. People didn't remove collars unless they expected to lose control of the person wearing them. The absence of the collar left her exposed to two possibilities: punishment for disobedience or punishment for trying to be free. "You're staying here tonight," he said. "Nothing will happen." Eris studied him as if testing the truth of his words. Her throat moved in a small swallow. She reached for the cup on the table without asking, then stopped herself. "May I?" she asked. "Take it. There's more." She took the cup, both hands wrapped around it. The warmth made her shoulders ease again. She sipped it carefully, the steam drifting around her face. The silence between them settled into something calmer. Cade watched her without staring, just enough to see the small shifts in her posture. Every gesture told him how much she'd been conditioned to wait for commands, to avoid missteps. She finished the tea and set the cup down gently. "I will go to the room now," she said. "To sleep." "Good," he replied. "Get some rest." She nodded once, then turned and walked down the hall. The oversized shirt brushed against her legs with each step. When she reached the doorway, she paused and looked back at him, her voice quiet but certain. "Thank you," she said. She closed the door. Cade rested his hands on the table, staring at the empty cup she'd touched. He felt the weight of the day settle into him. The market, the pen, the decision he'd made without thinking. Tomorrow would be different. He didn't know how yet, but change had entered the house the moment Eris stepped through the door. He sat there until the heater clicked off, then rose and locked the door for the night. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone in the quiet. Morning came in quiet layers. The hum of the water pump, the rustle of lawn leaves against the window, the muffled grunt of pigs shifting in their shelter. Cade woke early, as he always did. He pulled on a clean shirt and stepped into the main room. The house carried a new kind of stillness, one shaped by someone else breathing behind a closed door. He warmed a pot on the cooker and ladled in grain mash, stirring until it thickened. He set out 2 cups, not sure if Eris would want tea, but leaving the option open. While the mash cooked, he slipped on his boots and stepped outside to check the yard. The air snapped with cold. Dew clung to the fields. He scanned the fence line, a habit left over from work he no longer claimed. Everything looked normal. No tracks, no visitors, just his land stretching out to the orchard. When he returned inside, he heard a faint shift in the hall. The spare room door cracked open, and Eris stepped out slowly. Her hair, still slightly tangled from sleep, fell over her shoulders. She wore the same shirt he'd given her, but she tied a thin piece of cloth around her waist to keep it from slipping too far down. The knot sat slightly off-center, as if she wasn't sure how tight it should be. She stopped when she saw him, unsure whether she'd interrupted something. "You're up early," Cade said, keeping his voice calm. "I did not sleep much," she replied. Her bare feet pressed lightly against the wooden floor, cautious but awake. "Anything wrong?" Her fingers brushed the fabric at her hip. "I'm not used to sleeping in a bed." It felt unstable. Cade nodded. "Takes getting used to." She stepped closer to the table, eyes touching briefly on the steam rising from the pot. She hesitated, then asked, "Is that for both of us?" "Yes," he said. "Sit." She moved to the chair with the same tentative care she had shown the night before. He served her a bowl of grain mash mixed with sliced root and a small drizzle of tree honey he rarely used. He placed a cup of warm tea beside it. Eris picked up the spoon and paused. "This is too much." "It's not," he said. "You'll need the strength." She lowered her gaze and ate, slower than last night, but more certain. The room filled with the faint scent of warm grain and honey. While she ate, Cade took the chance to address the questions he knew would surface sooner or later. Questions about her safety, her place here, and what came next. "I need to go into town later," he said. "Sell some cured strips and pick up supplies." Eris stiffened, spoon stopping midair. "Do I stay here?" "If you want," he answered. "But I should know something first. Are you afraid of someone showing up for you?" She didn't answer immediately. Her shoulders rose slightly with her breath. "No one is looking for me," she said finally. "Not as a person." Her tone was steady, but the weight behind it was clear. "Then you can come with me," he said, "if you choose." She set the spoon down. "Why would you want me to?" "Because staying locked inside won't help you. You need to see the world without a chain around your neck." Eris touched her throat with a collar mark still red in the skin. The line had softened overnight, but it was visible. "I remember people staring yesterday," she said. "It made my skin feel tight." "They'll stare again," he said. "Some out of curiosity, some because they recognize a face they ignored before." She swallowed. "And you?" "I don't care who stares," he said simply. "You're with me." Eris looked at him for a long moment, as if measuring whether that promise held. Then she nodded. She finished her meal quietly. When she stood, she steadied herself at the table's edge. Though her body was cleaner now, the days of malnutrition showed in her posture, slight weakness in her legs, a faint tremor in her hands. "You'll need clothes," he said. "The shirt's fine, but we'll find something better in town." She touched the fabric at her collarbone. "Does it bother you that I wear your things?" "No," he answered. "I just want you to be comfortable." Outside, the sun pushed higher, warming the yard. Cade prepped the cart near the barn. He checked the tire seals, secured the crates, and ensured the pigs had fresh mash before leaving. Eris watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around her torso, not in fear, but against the cold. He waved her over. Ready. She stepped onto the compacted earth slowly, still barefoot. The cold bit at her skin, and she flinched. Without comment, Cade ducked into the shed and returned with a pair of soft-soled shoes. They were too big, but workable. He knelt, not to serve her, but to show her how the straps tightened. Like this, he said. She clenched her hands at her sides. You do not have to kneel. I'm not kneeling, he said. I'm showing you something. Her breathing steadied. She slipped her feet into the shoes and tightened the straps herself, copying his motions. Even that small act changed the set of her shoulders. They climbed into the cart. Eris sat upright, fingers gripping the side rail. Not out of fear, but alertness. She glanced at the collars still sitting on the tray through the open doorway, then looked away quickly. Should we bring it? She asked. No, he said. Leave it where it is. She exhaled and fixed her eyes on the road ahead. The ride into town was smoother than the one back from the market. The sun warmed her damp hair, drying the ends into soft curls. She sat stiffly at first, but as the farm faded behind them, her posture loosened. The wind tugged at the loose shirt, brushing it against her skin. Cade, she said quietly, almost testing the sound of his name. What do you expect me to do when we are in town? Just stay close, he said, and keep your head up. She frowned slightly. Why? Because you're not a secret, he said, and you don't need to look at the ground unless you want to. Her throat moved in a slow swallow. She nodded once, then looked out toward the distant rooftops of the town. They passed the first cluster of buildings, a grain depot, a repair shed, a row of market stalls preparing for the day. A few people glanced their way. One woman holding a basket paused, eyes locking on Eris with faint recognition, then kept walking. Eris didn't shrink this time. She straightened her back, even though her hands tightened around the rail hard enough to whiten her knuckles. Cade caught the movement from the corner of his eye and said nothing. She was doing exactly what she needed at her own pace. The main square opened in front of them. People moved through it in steady lines. Farmers, traders, workers in neat jackets. The smell of baked grain and simmering stew drifted from a food stand. Cade pulled the cart beside the distribution counter. The official from yesterday was already there, organizing data pads. His eyes flicked up and froze the moment he saw Eris. Her chin lifted a fraction, not defiant, but present. Cade stepped down from the cart. We're here to log product weight and pick up supplies. The official's gaze stayed locked on Eris. She shouldn't be here, he said. There was no transfer filed for her. There won't be, Cade replied. She's not stuck. People nearby slowed, listening without pretending otherwise. Eris' hand hovered near her thigh, not touching him, but close enough that he could sense the line she held between fear and resolve. Cade planted his feet, steady and clear. She walks beside me. That's all the record you need. The official's jaw tightened. He looked at the growing circle of eyes around them, then shifted his attention back to the datapad. Fine, he muttered, but if anyone challenges it, they can talk to me, Cade said. Eris let out a breath, so soft it barely broke the air. This time, she didn't look away. Cade finished the supply log with the official, keeping his tone steady. The square around them gradually resumed its rhythm, but the looks they received didn't disappear. Some curious, some dismissive, some quietly judgmental. Eris stood near the cart, her fingers resting lightly on the railing as if balancing herself in unfamiliar territory. She watched every movement, faces, hands, voices, trying to judge where danger might come from. Her breathing stayed controlled, though a faint tremor lingered in her shoulders. Cade returned to her side. You did well. I only stood, she said. Sometimes that's enough. She didn't answer, but her jaw relaxed. They walked deeper into town. Shops lined the lanes, fabric stalls, grain sellers, repair stands. The smell of cooked roots drifted from a food stall, warm and earthy. Eris paused, drawn in by the scent. You hungry? Cade asked. She glanced at him, unsure if she was allowed to say yes. A little. He bought 2 root wraps from the vendor, thin bread folded around spice tubers and green paste. When he handed one to Eris, she held it like something fragile. "I haven't eaten outside a pen before," she said. "You can start now." She took a small bite. The warmth made her eyes widen slightly. The flavor was richer than last night's stew. She ate slowly, savoring each bite like she was memorizing what normal life felt like. As they moved again, a man near a stall lifted his chin toward Eris. "That her?" From Havel's back pen. Eris froze. Cade turned his head just enough to meet the man's eyes. "She has a name." The man sneered lightly. "Didn't ask for it." "Then keep walking," Cade said. His voice carried no threat, but the firmness in it made the man look away. Eris swallowed hard. "Do all of them know?" "They think they do," Cade said. "But what they think isn't our problem." Eris's grip tightened around the root wrap. She didn't drop it. She held it like proof that she was allowed to stand here, allowed to eat something warm, allowed to be seen without being claimed. Cade led her toward a clothing stall next. Simple garments, nothing extravagant. The vendor, a middle-aged woman with rolled sleeves and sharp eyes, looked Eris over with careful assessment, not disgust. "Something light? Something that fits?" the woman asked. Eris stiffened. "I do not know what fits me." Cade stepped beside her. "Something practical. She works on a farm." The vendor nodded and pulled out a dark wrap skirt and a fitted top with adjustable ties. "For movement," she said. "These won't restrict her." Eris looked at the clothes with hesitation. "Do I change here?" "No," Cade said. "We'll do it back home." The vendor handed over the garments. But before they turned to leave, she looked at Eris and lowered her voice. "You're safe with him?" Eris blinked, taken aback. "I think so." Cade didn't answer for her. The vendor nodded once. "Then good." As they walked away, Eris's steps slowed. "People ask strange questions here," she said. "Not strange," Cade replied. "Just cautious. Not everyone wants harm." Eris considered this. "I do not know how to tell who is safe. That's why I'm here," he said. "For now." The words struck her deeply. She didn't respond, but her body shifted closer to him in a subtle, instinctive way. They made their last stop, a small hardware stall for fence fittings. While Cade checked the parts, Eris stood a short distance away. A group of farmhands passed by, glancing at her with the kind of half-curious, half-dismissive look people give to something they don't fully understand. One whispered, "That's her." Havel said she couldn't speak. Eris lifted her chin slightly. Havel was wrong. The words came out steady, surprising even herself. The farmhand blinked, muttered something, and moved on. Cade heard it. When he finished paying and returned to her side, he didn't comment on the exchange. He only said, "Let's head back." Eris didn't hide the faint, uncertain pride in her posture. The ride home felt different than the one into town. She wasn't gripping the rail as tightly. The wind pushed her hair back, letting the sun warm the exposed lines on her neck and collarbone. Halfway down the road, she spoke. "You said I may choose how long I stay." "Yes." She hesitated. "But what if? I don't know how to choose yet." "Then I'll help you learn." She absorbed that quietly. "And what do you want?" she asked. "For me." Truly, Cade thought about it as the cart rolled across the dry earth. "I want you to stand on your own feet," he said. "Not because I told you to, but because you're ready." Eris looked down at her hands. The wind pulled the oversized shirt against her frame. "I want that too," she said. When the farm finally appeared on the horizon, she let out a slow breath. Relief, clarity, something shifting inside her. The house was no longer just shelter. It was the first place where her future wasn't decided by someone else's convenience. "Cade," she said softly. "Yeah. Thank you for today." He nodded once, eyes on the road, but the faint ease in his posture said enough. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But she was stronger than she had been the day before, standing straighter, speaking louder, beginning to unlearn the shape of fear. And for the first time, she wasn't walking into that alone. The cart rolled into the yard just as the sun began to drop behind the larn trees. Warm light spread across the fields, turning the soil into deep copper shades. Cade parked beside the shed and killed the engine. The sudden quiet settled around them, broken only by the soft grunts of the pigs and the low hum of the heater inside the trough. Eris stepped down carefully. Her hair moved with the breeze, the oversized shirt brushing her thighs. She held the folded clothes they'd bought pressed to her chest, unsure whether she should enter the house first or wait for him. Cade nodded toward the door. "Go on inside. I'll take care of the supplies." She obeyed, but slowly. Every few steps she glanced back to make sure this permission still held. When she reached the threshold, she paused and turned. "Cade, today I was not afraid the whole time." He rested a hand on the crate he was unloading. "Good. I didn't think that was possible." "You're stronger than you think," he said. She lowered her gaze, then stepped inside the house. He finished unloading, brushed dirt from his hands, and followed her in. The house smelled faintly of warm grain and cooling metal. Eris stood near the table, holding the clothing from the vendor. She seemed unsure where to go next, whether she should ask permission or simply retreat to her room. "You can change now if you want," Cade said. "Use the spare room. Or here, if you prefer space." Her fingers tightened around the bundle. "Do you need me to wear these for work?" "I didn't buy them for work," he replied. "I bought them so you'd have something that fits you." The answer stirred something in her. She nodded and walked to the spare room, closing the door gently. A few moments passed. Fabric rustling, footsteps shifting, the soft thump of her setting aside the oversized shirt. When the door finally opened, Eris stepped out wearing the fitted wrap skirt and sleeveless top. The skirt hugged her hips and slit cleanly at one side for movement. The top crossed over her chest and tied behind her neck, leaving her back bare. Clean skin showed where mud had hidden her shape the day before, violet and smooth, faint silver lines glinting along her ribs. She held herself rigid, waiting for judgment. Cade didn't speak right away. He took in the sight with a steady, quiet expression, not intrusive, not hungry, but aware. Her breath caught, uncertain what his silence meant. "It fits you," he said. "You look like yourself." She exhaled shakily. "I don't know what that means." "You will," he said. She stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "When we were in town, when they stared at me, I kept thinking I should hide. But then you said to keep my head up. I tried, and it felt strange, but also Cade held her gaze. "Because they don't get to decide what you are." Her throat tightened. She moved another step closer. The space between them thinned. The clean scent of warm water still lingered on her, mixed with dust from the road and the faint spice from the wrap she ate earlier. "Cade," she said softly, "when you look at me now, am I still something you pulled out of the mud?" He stepped closer too, but slowly, giving her room to change her mind. "No," he said. "You're a woman standing in my house." Eris's breath stuttered with something raw, fear mixed with longing. She raised her hand, then hesitated inches from his chest. "Can I?" she asked. He nodded once. Her palm pressed lightly to his shirt, testing the warmth beneath the fabric. Her fingers curled, feeling the shape of him. This was not the terrified touch of someone trained to serve. This was curiosity, desire, and the first spark of a choice she never believed she was allowed to make. Kaden moved first. She stepped into him slowly, cautiously, and placed her other hand on his shoulder. Her bare stomach hovered close to his shirt. Her breath warmed his collarbone. "I don't know how to want something without being punished for it," she whispered. "You're not being punished here," he said. Her lips parted with a shaky inhale. "Kay, do you want me?" He answered without hesitation. "Yes, but only if you want me." She looked down at her hands on him, then back up with a steady, vulnerable honesty. "I do," she said. He lifted a hand to her cheek, slow enough to let her pull back. She didn't. Her skin warmed under his touch, and she leaned into it just slightly. Her body pressed fully into his. The soft fabric of her top brushed his chest. Her thighs aligned against him. Her breath caught again, not from fear this time, but from the intensity of being this close to someone by her own decision. She rose on her toes and touched her lips to his. Not a desperate gesture, but a cautious, deliberate one. Testing, learning, claiming her own intent for the first time. Cade cupped the back of her neck gently and deepened the kiss only when she pushed forward first. Her fingers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. Her heart hammered against his chest. When she finally broke the kiss, she rested her forehead against his, breathing unsteady but sure. "Tell me what happens next," she whispered. "Whatever you choose," he said. She closed her eyes. "Then stay with me tonight." He lifted her chin with his thumb. "If you're certain." Eris nodded with a clarity she hadn't possessed earlier that morning. "I am." She took his hand, her fingers trembling but determined, and guided him toward the spare room she once approached like a temporary shelter. Now she walked toward it like a space she wanted to fill with warmth, touch, and the first night of her own choosing. Cade followed, steps steady, knowing this was no rescue. This was her decision. Eris closed the door behind them, leaving the rest of the house in a soft hush. The spare room felt warmer than before, maybe from the heater running, maybe from the way she held Cade's hand as if anchoring herself. She didn't rush. She stopped near the edge of the bed and turned toward him with a steadiness that hadn't existed 2 days ago. Her fingers slid from his hand and rested on his chest. The contact was gentle but deliberate. "I'm choosing this," she said, "not because I owe it, but because I want you close." Cade stepped toward her, slow enough that she could stop him at any moment. She didn't. Her hands slipped to his waist, guiding him with a quiet confidence shaped from trust, not obedience. He lifted a hand and brushed her cheek with the back of his knuckles. She leaned into the touch instinctively, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes softened, searching his face for anything that might hint at hesitation. "There's no rush," he said. "I know," she whispered, "but I don't want distance tonight." He kissed her again, slow, grounded, steady, not claiming her, not consuming her, but meeting her exactly where she was. Her arms tightened around him, pulling him closer. His hands moved to her waist, feeling the warmth beneath the tie top. Her breath deepened against his mouth, her body responding with a mixture of nerves and longing. She pressed her forehead to his chest. "When I lived in that pen, people touched me without asking. I froze. I shut myself off. Now, I feel everything too much." Her hands traveled up his back, fingers tracing the lines of his shoulders. "And none of it feels wrong," she said. Cade rested a hand on the small of her back, guiding her just slightly toward the bed. Not pushing, just offering direction. She followed willingly, sitting on the edge. Her knees brushed his hips as he stood before her. She slid her hands up beneath his shirt, exploring the warmth of his skin. Her touch wasn't hesitant anymore. Still careful, still learning, but full of intent. He bent to kiss her neck, slow and deliberate. Her breath hitched, her fingers tightening against his sides. "Cade," she murmured, "don't stop." He didn't, but nothing he did rushed her. Her body language guided the pace, each slow shift of her hips, each exhale against his collarbone. She drew him down beside her, and he lay with her in the quiet dim of the room. Her legs brushed his. Her hands explored his arms, chest, jawline. She learned the shape of him with the same curiosity she'd shown toward her own freedom earlier that day. When clothes began to loosen, it happened without hurried fumbling. Just a natural progression of closeness, guided entirely by her choices. She untied the knot at her hip with steady fingers, letting the wrap skirt fall softly against her legs. She lifted his shirt inch by inch, watching his face for any sign of discomfort. There was none. Their bodies came together with slow, intimate certainty, skin warming against skin, breath mingling, hands searching for anchor points on shoulders, hips, ribs. There was no fear, no command, no hesitation left in her. Only trust, only desire shaped by safety. The room filled with soft, uneven breathing, quiet gasps, and the sound of the bed shifting under their weight as they moved closer, learning each other's rhythms. He followed her cues, and she set the pace, every touch and affirmation that this moment belonged to her. When she finally curled against him, her breath steadying, she pressed her cheek to his chest and whispered, "I didn't think I could feel this full." Cade smoothed a hand over her back. "You chose it. That's what matters." She lay there for a long moment, tracing circles over his ribs with her fingertips. "I want to stay here tonight," she said. "In your arms." Not because I'm afraid of the dark, because it feels right. He drew the blanket over them. Then stay. Eris shifted, fitting herself against him in a way that felt instinctive, natural. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing evened out. Her fingers curled lightly around his wrist, as if afraid he might disappear while she slept. He didn't. Outside, the last of the daylight faded. Inside, the warmth between them held steady. For the first time since she'd stepped out of that pen, Eris fell asleep with no tension in her shoulders, no threat waiting for her dreams, only the quiet rise and fall of his chest under her cheek. And Cade didn't move until she slept deeply, safely, fully choosing the space she rested in. Cade woke first. The room was still dim, touched only by the faint gray light slipping through the thin curtain. Eris slept against him without tension, one leg hooked loosely over his, her hand resting against his ribs as if she had always belonged there. Her hair spread across his chest in soft white strands, warmer now that the cold months had shifted. He stayed still, giving her the space to wake naturally. Her breathing steadied into smaller, lighter pulls, and soon she shifted, eyes opening with a slow, careful awareness. For a moment, she looked unsure, as if bracing for the world to snap back to what it had once been. Then she realized she was still in his arms. Her body eased, shoulders unlocking, breath letting out in a quiet release. "You stayed," she said softly. "You asked me to," Cade replied. She studied his face, fingertips brushing along the faint scar near his temple. She didn't rush out of bed. She didn't pull away to hide herself. She shifted closer instead, lifting her mouth to his for a slow morning kiss. It was unhurried, grounded, a confirmation rather than a question. When they finally rose, Eris took her time dressing. She wrapped her dark skirt around her hips, smoothing the fabric as she tied it. She chose the deep green shawl she'd worn in town once, shoulders bare, the fabric crossing neatly across her chest. Her movements had changed. She moved like someone stepping into her own skin for the first time. Cade cooked breakfast. Larn fruit slices warmed on a pan, thick grain cakes, and brewed seed coffee. Eris carried plates to the table, her steps light but steady. She sat opposite him, watching him prepare his own cup. "Yesterday," she said quietly, "I felt something I haven't felt since before I was taken." He lifted his gaze. "Tell me." "Freedom," she said, "not just from chains, from being defined by someone else." She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing the faint silver markings along her cheekbone. "Last night didn't take anything from me. It added something back." He reached across the table and touched her hand. She turned her palm upward, letting his thumb rest in the center. When they finished eating, the routine of the farm pulled them back into motion. Cade stepped outside to check the feeders. Eris followed, her pace sure and unhurried. The air carried a mild chill, and thin clouds drifted over the early sky. Pigs snorted as they approached, crowding near the fence with impatient grunts. Eris filled the troughs with grain discs while Cade adjusted the water valves. She didn't work with hesitation or fear. Her posture was open, shoulders back, steps efficient. The mud that once clung to her skin had long been washed away, but now even the memory of it had loosened. When they were done, she stood beside him, hands on her hips, breath steady from the morning work. "I want to go to town with you today," she said. "Not to hide behind you, to walk with you." "You sure?" he asked. She nodded. "If anyone looks at me like I belong in a pen, I want them to see me standing beside you. By choice." They left after cleaning up. The cart hummed softly as it rolled across the path toward Nerith 5's small trade street. Dust kicked up behind the wheels, scattering under the wind. Eris sat close enough that her shoulder brushed his now, and then, not out of nervousness but closeness. When they reached the town center, people noticed immediately. Eris didn't lower her head. She kept her chin level, silver-lined markings catching the sunlight. The fitted shawl and skirt made her look both practical and elegant, far from the frightened figure she'd once been. Near the distribution office, the same official from before stepped out. He paused when he saw her. Eris tensed for a moment. Cade felt it in the way her hand brushed his arm. Instead of pulling her closer, he let her decide the next step. She walked ahead of him. When she reached the counter, she stood straight and met the official's gaze. "I'm not stock," she said. "Record that if it matters so much here." The official blinked, uncertain. Cade stepped beside her, but stayed half a step back. Present, supportive, not shielding. "I'm updating my household registry," Cade said. "She lives with me. She works with me. There's no classification for that in your charts, so write it however you need to." The official looked between them, recognizing something had shifted. He entered a few notes into his slate, the tone of the keys sharper than usual. "It's logged," he said. "No disputes attached." Eris exhaled slowly. They stepped away from the counter. Cade rested a hand lightly on her back, not claiming her, just anchoring. She leaned into his touch for a brief second before straightening again. "Thank you," she said, "but I want more than a note in a ledger." "What did you have in mind?" She looked at the buildings along the street. Shops, food stalls, small kiosks lined with supplies. Then her gaze returned to him. "I want us to register as partners," she said. "If you want that. Not to prove anything to them. To settle something inside myself." Cade studied her expression carefully. Her voice didn't tremble. Her eyes didn't dart away. She had chosen this moment with clarity. "I want it," he said. The registry clerk inside nodded them toward the long slate and simple ink stylus. Eris's fingers brushed his as she picked up the pen. Their names joined on the same line, clean strokes side by side. No one commented. No one interfered. When she handed the stylus back, she placed her hand on her abdomen, not for drama, but instinct. Cade covered her hand with his. Her eyes softened. Outside, the light had shifted to late afternoon. The wind carried the scent of grain fields and warm soil. As they walked back toward the cart, people looked again, but something in their expressions had changed. Curiosity replaced disdain. Respect replaced mockery. On the ride home, Eris rested her head on his shoulder. "I feel steady," she said. "You are, and I feel safe. Not because you protect me, because you walk beside me." Cade brushed a kiss in her hair. "You'll never walk alone here. Not unless you choose to." The farm came into view, orchard leaves rustling, pigs calling for their evening feed. It wasn't big or remarkable or even prosperous, but Eris stepped through the gate as if she were crossing into a future finally shaped by her own decisions. She took Cade's hand, laced her fingers through his, and pulled him toward the house with a small, knowing smile. Their life had already begun. The world around them hadn't changed overnight, but one small piece of it had shifted, quietly, unmistakably. Because a woman once sold with livestock now walked her own land as a partner, choosing her place and the man beside her with clear, unwavering intent.